Hello, this is Julia Child.
No, you're not Julia Childs. Can we start again?
Okay, hi, this is Jules Zalon, and I'm going to show you how I make sauerkraut. First of all, I want to warn you, I'm not here to teach you how to make sauerkraut, because if you really want to learn how to make sauerkraut, you can go online, and there are a score of really good videos from really professional people that'll tell you how to make sauerkraut. The problem is, they're professional. So you don't go to a professional to learn how to do something and think you can do it. If that were the case, you could watch Mickey Mantle hit a home run and then get up on the plate and see how far that will get you. It won't get you very far. What I want to show you is that not only can Sander Alex Katz show you how to make really good sauerkraut, but a rank amateur like me can as well. And if I can, you can. So let's get to it. First, you're going to take your cabbage and wash it. And if it's a mess, you take off the outside leaves. I already took off the outside leaves. So this one is ready to go. But what you want to do is to remove at least one outside leaf, and you'll see why shortly. Let me pull this off and reserve it. Okay, next thing we do is to cut our cabbage. This is why you want a really sharp knife. Once you cut the cabbage, you want to get rid of the core. Don't throw it away, it makes great soup. And, okay. And now we simply start to make the slaw. So this is the nice boring stuff. You basically want to just cut the cabbage in a way that they say make it about a dime's thickness. Actually, I like it a little thicker. The reason I like it thicker is because you get a better crunch. Next, we're going to weigh this stuff out. So we take our vessel and put it on our scale and zero out the scale. And what we're going to do is we're going to make 3 batches, each of 2.5 pounds. It works out perfectly to fit into our Fido jar. Just at about 2 pounds, I stop. And I'm going to put salt on top of this, and I'll show you why in a minute. We want roughly 1.5 tablespoons. The reason we do this is because we're then going to cover the salt, and I'll show you why, until we get to exactly 2.5 pounds. Okay. And here's why we put the salt on before we finish the cabbage. Because what we're going to want to do now is to start the fermentation process. And the way you do it is by getting the salt mixed in with the cabbage. Salt pulls water out of the cabbage, but the other way pulling water out of the cabbage is using your bare hands and really making, really pressuring. So what you do is, I'm pushing this down, and the reason that I put the salt in near the top but not at the top is because when I'm pushing down, I don't want to get the salt on my hands. I want to leave the salt in the vessel. Let me tell you just briefly how sauerkraut works. Sauerkraut basically is the fermentation, the decomposition, if you will, of cabbage. The cabbage itself contains huge amounts of bacteria on the leaves, but you also have bacteria on your hands. And the combination of the bacteria on the cabbage and on your hands is the magic ingredient here. The salt helps to pull some of the water out. Mostly it's going to be the massaging of the cabbage itself that does it. So you need a certain amount of brute strength, or what they call is a poker, or something that pounds it down. I use my hands, and I'll do this for about 8 or 10 minutes. And for the first few minutes, it would appear that nothing is happening. But very, very slowly, as I start to massage and squeeze the cabbage, it will squeeze the water out and create with the salt a brine. The process here is that the fermentation must take place outside of oxygen, outside of air. The cabbage has to be underneath the brine. If it's over the brine, it'll just spoil, you'll get mold, and it'll fall apart. So we've been doing this for about 5 minutes, and as you can see, it's really becoming very briny. And there's still quite a bit to go. Okay. I think we've just about done it. Take a look. Now that is what you call brine. And that's really important, because all the activity has to take place under the brine. Because all we're doing really is to take advantage of what Mother Nature does naturally. All this stuff is natural stuff. If the cabbage is left out in the air, it'll rot and ferment. But if it's underneath the brine, the bacteria that are on the leaves and the bacteria that are on your hands, incidentally, you wash your hands really well before you start doing this. So we're talking about bacteria. The bacteria that are on the leaves and the bacteria that are on your hands are going to eat at the sugars in the cabbage. Cabbage is very sweet. We now have 3 batches, 3 40-ounce batches of the preliminary sauerkraut. I have 2 of them in here and 1 of them in here. Some people like to season their sauerkraut. Other people like it straight. I like to season. Michael Pollan likes to put in juniper berries. People put in onions. People put in carrots. My favorite is a combination of garlic and caraway. So let me show you how I do it. The first thing I'm going to do is to put on some caraway seeds. So I just take a caraway seed container and measure out 3 rounded tablespoons of caraway seeds. 2 for that, because there's 2 there. And 1 there. That is 3 very rounded caraway seeds, tablespoons. And then we simply mince up the garlic. And it doesn't really matter. You can put the garlic in whole, you can put them in minced, you can put them in sliced, because over a 3-week period, all of their beautiful flavors are going to transfer. So just take this arbitrarily and throw it in here. Take this arbitrarily, throw it in here. Now you have this mess, and all you have to do is to essentially mix it up a little bit with your hands. Remember, you keep cleaning your hands while you go forward. Okay, so it's not really critical that it be mixed beautifully, because it's going to be sitting in this swill for 3 weeks, exchanging all the flavors and bacteria and what have you. And now we are ready to do the real canting, I guess you'd say. We have this great Fido jar, which you pop over, take like this, and then just grab a hunk of sauerkraut, squeeze it, and drop it in. Okay, we're almost up to the top here. Maybe just 1 more little bit. Okay, now we still have all the brine and stuff that's in here, and here's what we do with this. Okay, that takes care of all of the kraut itself. Now we sort of just push it down to make ourselves a little bit of room. And remember at the beginning I told you we're going to save some leaves. This is why we save the leaves. We want to put the leaves in here to cover all of the cabbage. So the idea is you have to keep the cabbage below the brine level. Remember, we haven't put in the brine yet, and this would be a really good time to do it. I'm going to leave a little over. We're probably going to use it. How do you keep the cabbage below the brine? There are at least 10 different ways of doing it. There are some people put in weights, glass weights, ceramic weights. Some of them have tops that actually push this stuff down. What I use is a little trick. I took a jicama, which is that great big radish-like looking thing, cut it this way, as you can see, cut it with a little hole. And then what I do is to slip it in here on either side of this area. Oops. And stick a carrot, which I whittled down to fit right between. Okay. So now the question is how you, I think we can still put in a little more there, the rest of that. Now, how do we keep the thing down under the brine? You can just take a jar, sanitize, sterilize, turn it upside down, stick it on there, and this just perfectly holds it down. The jar holds the jicama down, which holds the leaves down, which holds the cabbage down. And as you can see, the cabbage is at this level and the brine is at that level. And that is that for 3 weeks, except for one thing. This thing right now has a gasket, a rubber gasket. And the rubber gasket means that no air gets out, but there's gas building up. So what you have to do is once or twice a day, you just pop it, open it up, burp it, they say, and just cover it back up again. You can avoid the whole thing just by taking the gasket out and locking it down. If that's the case, a little bit of just enough air will be able to get out so it will, escape without having to burp it. The only problem is if you don't like the smell of sauerkraut in your kitchen for 3 weeks, you may want to use this procedure. But otherwise, there we go. We have now a full gallon of this absolutely wonderful, delicious stuff. And it's as good as any sauerkraut I have ever eaten. And it is so healthy, it'll knock your socks off. Okay, the great day has come. It's been 3 weeks, so it's time to take this out. Here's what we do. First, we do everything in reverse. So we take this out. We take out and remove the jicama. Set this aside, put it in the refrigerator. Remember, it's fermented, so it'll last forever.
Go.
Okay, so we're just going to temporarily pour out the excess brine. Next, we have to decant the pieces of cabbage leaves that we had to keep all of the slaw underwater. But right now what we have to do is to decant, get all of this stuff off, which has really been packed down. We want to get it out and loose. So just get it, remember, our hands are very clean. So we get in here and we sort of loosen this all up and then just pour it out. Okay. Now before we finish up, we want to replace the brine in here. And close this up because you want to get all of the slaw caught. There we go. Okay. So we managed to salvage a little more. Okay. Okay, so the last act, we're going to jar it. Just put the jar, you got a nice sterilized jar, your hands are clean. Just take a big mess of kraut, squeeze it into a cylinder, and drop it in the bottle. That's one. Okay, this is the third jar. We're going to take this jar and put it here for a second. The last thing we do is to refill the brine. Right up to the top. That's one. See the bubbles? It's really great. And then you just jar it, wash off these beautiful jars. Okay, so here we have 3 beautiful quarts of 4-week-old fermented sauerkraut, and it's really awesome. But we have a bonus. We have all of this excess brine, which I'm now going to pour into a jar. And I now have a jar of sauerkraut juice. You've got to know how healthy this stuff is. There's a doctor named Joseph Mercola who sent his homemade sauerkraut out to be assayed, and it came back and they said there are more CFUs, that's the way you count probiotics. There were more CFUs in 2 ounces of sauerkraut than in a whole bottle of probiotics. So this is really great stuff, and all it took was maybe a couple of hours of work. And now I'm going to refrigerate it. Oh. And you know how long this stuff lasts? Well, theoretically it lasts for years, but this is only going to last for 3 weeks. And then I'm going to fill this thing up again with more cabbage, and we'll be on our way. Bon appetit!